And we are live. So we're going to give it a few minutes for a few people to come in here, but we have just hijacked the official HVAC school computer. I feel like I'm doing something wrong here. I feel like I'm going to get in trouble.
That's right.
If you're watching this on the HVAC school platform, I'm Chris. I'm from the HVAC Overtime YouTube show. I've got my co-host over here, Adam Muffitch. Don't know if the camera is going to go over there.
Hi.
And then we have Chris Hughes from the Energy Conservatory. And then we have Wes Davis from ACA right here. Okay.
Hello, everybody.
So we are currently live from the 2024 HVAC School Symposium. And it's a bit overwhelming to me. I guess that's an understatement, maybe. You know, I think this is my third. What about you guys?
Since the beginning.
Since the beginning.
Yeah.
So this is your fifth?
Number two.
And then Adam?
3.
Yeah. Actually, no, maybe I've only been here 2 times.
Yeah.
I think you've been here more than me.
I don't know.
Yeah. I introduced you to this crowd. And the next thing you know, Adam's taking over. And
That's what I do best.
now I follow Adam places. I went into something the other day and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm here. Actually, I don't even know why I am staying at the place that I'm staying at. And I think it's because of Adam. So, you know, I got to ask you, Chris, why am I staying at the animal house?
We just needed to fill the gap.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
You know, we were brainstorming like
check.
we need one more payment. You know? Like, we need to get some shirts made. It'd be nice for somebody to pick up that.
He's got that California money.
Yeah, Title 24 money. Man.
So, you know, this is the second day of the symposium. It's so far been amazing. This year, I actually am just enjoying the show. And I actually have to say it's kind of nice just to be able to be an observer and actually just hang out, you know?
You were talking about being overwhelming. I think it's sort of both. I mean, you come in, you see faces and names, you think, holy cow, this person's here, that person's there. But it's also, I think Brian did a good job of keeping it very intimate, if I can use that word, to say it's a smaller group. And you can meet people and everybody's so friendly.
Yeah.
It's a joy.
This is a community. This community's been here, but the community is growing. And there's a good group of us right now. And we all help each other. We all bring each other up. And, you know, we have manufacturers that compete with other manufacturers that are here, but that is irrelevant. This is a community and it's about bringing the community up. And everybody genuinely wants to be here. That's what I've noticed. So Adam, so if you guys don't know, Adam Muffitch here, my co-host, he has really been pushing hard and he has been really excelling in the building science community, in the HVAC community. And you've been working with HVAC school now. We're going to lift the curtain here. Adam's been working behind the scenes with HVAC school and, writing articles, tech tips. And Adam, I don't think I've said this publicly, but Adam just did a presentation at AHR. And now I didn't get to see the presentation live, but Adam ran through the presentation with myself before, and I was blown away. It was a story. And you know what's interesting is Adam went through this process over the last, year and a half when you were doing the Passive House?
Yeah.
So I got to hear the Passive House stories, in my messenger, every week. Oh man, I did this. Oh man, I did this. Well, then what Adam did at AHR was he recapped everything and put it into a 45-minute session where he explained the whole process. Can you talk a little bit about that, Adam?
I don't know. It was like a labor of love type deal. And it's funny, somebody here sat through the presentation and he asked, like, how can I replicate and teach people what you did? And like, I don't know. And it started several years back, like everything started for me when I took the Jack Rise online ACA training. That was like the beginning of everything for me. And it took me a while to get through that. And that was, I'm sure you've gone through it, right?
Right.
It's a long process type deal, but like there's so much information in there. And that's like the beginning of the foundation of everything that I did,
How long ago was that, would you say?
I don't know, a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Now, I have a question. And, you have been bettering yourself, Adam. Chris, you have been bettering yourself. And you have made a pivot in your career. It's been a while now since you've made your pivot. Adam, you're currently making a pivot, right? And a lot of that has to do with Adam and Chris being part of this community. And Wes, you know, you with the company you're with, you know, the content that they're consuming, the technical books and everything that they're consuming, that's responsible for this pivot with these guys.
Thank you. I feel like I'm being given a lot of credit for something I didn't do.
But you're part of it.
And I'm happy to be a part of it. I really am. ACC is doing a lot of great things. And Adam mentioned Jack Rise, God rest his soul, no longer with us, but he gave so much. And that's what a lot of this industry is about, is the giving. You mentioned earlier, a lot of cooperative efforts, the rising tide lifting all boats. I think that's what this is all about.
You know, it's funny because Adam's been using that phrase a lot lately. You know, when and if you guys didn't get to watch Brian's presentation yesterday at the end of the show, I highly suggest, if you haven't already gotten the virtual ticket, go get the virtual ticket for the symposium. $26. I mean, my goodness, you get access for a couple months after the show. I think totally worth it. Watch Brian's presentation at the end of the show. But you know, we all get caught up in this funk that starts to happen sometimes. And even Adam and I get caught up in this funk, and we've been encouraging each other. And he's been using that phrase, you know, quite often when, you know, we're like, why are we doing this? Why are we struggling? So why are we helping this many people? And then it's like, wait, but we're trying to help the industry. We're trying to help each other. Now, you know, it may not be myself, you know, lifting up the entire industry, just myself. No, but you know, I'm a part, you're a part, we're all a part, and we're coming together and we're raising everybody up. And that's the community that we're talking about. And, you know, Brian said it, and I've said this a few times lately too. As much as I despise social media is responsible for why we are here right now the way that we are. Yeah. It really is. Adam and I would not be friends. Yeah, we would not be friends if it wasn't for social media. I wouldn't know that there's another person that thinks like me out there unless I just ran into him at a supply house.
Across the country,
across the world. We're communicating with people all around the world. And this is amazing. I highly suggest that all of you out there, if you haven't already, keep your eyes out, follow HVAC School and pay attention. Brian will be posting when they release the tickets for next year's 2025 Symposium. You definitely want to get your tickets.
So yeah, the classes yesterday, everything was great. Everything I sat through was great. You know, the one that Brian did was amazing. And then also you had quite the awesome presentation as well too.
Thank you.
Chris here with the Energy Conservatory.
Russ King,
Steve Rogers,
Steve Rogers.
King, and they talked a little bit about like heat pump sizing, what's to come, and a little bit about the new Manual S,
right.
Which I'm really interested. When is that coming out?
Soon. It just kills me. What we wanted to do was to make it available for free online, so that people, contractors, code officials, whoever could see it. And getting that platform ready to go and getting it posted is taking just a little bit longer than we'd hoped. But we're very, very close. I'm hopeful that if not today, then next week early, we'll be able to say, hey, go here. You can see the standard and make it and have it free. Russ King wrote the user's guide. So the standard's pretty concise, pretty tight on the requirements. And then the user's guide can explain and provide examples and give illustrations and discuss things a little bit more in depth. And so that's being reviewed, and we'll put both together. We'll have the standard and then what we call the user's guide. That'll all be published as one document. That'll be available for purchase and or available online. Nice. So yeah, that's coming soon. So
I was kind of wanting to talk about, like you were mentioning, the symposium for next year, get your tickets. Like for anybody who's ever been to like let's say a noon kickoff football game, you do some like early tailgating, you know, you get out there, the fog's there. Like when I showed up this morning, all I could be reminded of is like, it's like I'm at LSU Stadium and I'm walking up to the stadium, and it's like you feel the calm before the storm, like you're going to a big game, right? That's what it felt like for me this morning. You know, it's about the, you know what I'm saying? You get that vibe. You're like,
it's energy in the air.
Yeah. The vibe's fun.
I always say that everybody wants to be here, and they genuinely do. You know, everybody wants to be here. The other thing too is that if you do come to these events, and if you're at this event right now, if you're watching this, don't feel left out. There is stuff going on every night with all different groups of people, and and there's always something to do, and even if you have a plan, like, we have plans tonight, but there's a party going on here, there's a party going on there, and
Reception here,
yeah,
sponsored thing there.
people are
Yeah.
bouncing around, going to all these different functions, and it's just a genuine good time. If you do get to make it in person to the symposium, make sure you get lots of rest, which has been impossible. You need rest. You need to be, you're going to need a vacation after the symposium. That's a pretty good thing to say.
Definitely want that Sunday day of rest afterwards. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't call in sick on Monday.
So,
Absolutely right.
So typically before the stream, for those that don't know, on the Overtime platform, we're always having conversations and banter, and oftentimes, and it's funny because I cut Chris Hughes off, and he's like, "Dude, you just cut me off," and I said, "Stop talking. Wait till the show goes live." That's a typical thing that happens on Overtime. Now I know I said that to you, but I forgot why I said that to you. What were we talking about?
You were talking about talking too much.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yep, and he does that.
Okay, so
we were talking about dead air.
Yes.
And it, like, I don't know, maybe I just didn't have enough sleep, but you said dead air, and I'm like, oh, that's catchy. I'm like, we should use that somewhere. And it's like, what can we name in air conditioning dead air?
Yes.
And I was thinking, well, there's dead band, and air doesn't move, right? Because that's when the air conditioner's just like, well, that's when the air is dead. The air is dead. You're not circulating. The house is, I like to think the house is in a chaos state because nothing's controlling it at that point. The air is dead.
Is there a point that, in a duct system, when you have turbulent flow and you have a spot where maybe within the ductwork the air isn't moving so much, would that be dead air in that spot?
I wouldn't say dead air.
Okay.
And from what I've learned in that, it's like it may not be moving in the direction you want it.
Yeah.
Right. Like a good example of that is Ashley has some flow profiles, right? Like in an air handler, let's say you put a plenum that's 20 by 20 with an opening that's 12 by 20. When the air shoots out of that air handler, I think what you're thinking is like that little pocket to the right side, right? Like that's dead air, but it's probably just swirling out of control.
And let me say, that's the spot that, before I understood anything, that I would always insert my probe to measure the air, and it's like, what it's not moving, but then you move it over 6 inches and it's like, now it's moving too fast. What's going on?
Yeah. So that's like what's happening is like you have so much velocity pressure coming out of the air handler right there that you can create a negative pressure right there in the swirl. So if you're ever taking that pressure measurement, you get negative in supply. It's because that velocity is just ejecting out of that blower. And we did a research project this at TC, and we figured out that it was like, Wes, were you there for that? I thought you were, but it was like 3 feet until and it was only one system, but like we tested it. It took about 3 feet to where the fan profile, we figured out where the air was fully developed. And if you don't want to know what fully developed means, catch the class that me and Steve are going to be doing soon. The content.
There you go.
I like that the whole dead air thing though. Like if a house is in a chaotic state, like you said, like airflow is not moving. And I think a lot of HVAC guys, like residential guys, are like, I want that thermostat to be satisfied and I want it to shut off. That's exactly the opposite of what my goal is. Like, if a customer calls me, it's like, it's running nonstop. What's the temperature in the house? 70, or 75. Sounds good to me. Like my job is done, right? Yeah. Like you want to move the comfortable air. Like you want to be surrounded by comfortable air. You don't want to shut off the comfortable air.
I do like the idea of expounding on that stagnant and dead. That tying those two together, there's something there.
Go ahead.
Just real quick side story, and it kind of applies, but it doesn't. We were waiting for Rob Minnick to give his presentation yesterday, and we said, hey, David Richardson ought to do like 10 minutes of stand-up while we're waiting for everybody to get in the room. And so then we started thinking about HVAC jokes, and this reminded me of the dead air story, and we were coming up with stupid, corny stuff, but that's a whole other story. But stagnant and dead, I like the idea of going somewhere with that.
On a flip note, I just had something that popped in my head that in your presentation yesterday, Chris, when you were doing things, I kind of leaned over to Adam and I said something that I've been thinking about lately. Now, I'm not not the person to stand up and really make these points. I don't know, maybe not. I don't feel like I'm qualified to do this, but my question is, when it comes to the residential side, right? And I guess this applies to commercial too. When you were doing your presentation, you guys were talking about, you know, the load calculations. You were talking about sizing equipment, sizing heat pumps, letting customers know. And what popped in my head was, at what point is it our responsibility to educate the consumer or the customer on what comfortable really is? I know that's a difficult one, because, you know, everybody says, hey, let the customer come out here. Let the customer tell us what they like about the system. But what if they don't know what comfortable is? And the reason why I bring this up, because there was a conversation, and I'm not going to name names, but there was a conversation about an article that Adam posted. And the argument against the article that Adam posted an article about heat pumps. And the main argument that I get from this person that was pushing back on what Adam wrote was that sometimes people like gas furnaces because the air blows hotter.
Let me.
And my question with that is, well, if you're using the comparison that the air blows hotter, then you're not understanding what comfort is, right?
Right. Let's back up for a second. Let's go back to the original question.
Okay.
You said, should we as contractors be educating our consumers about comfort? So you don't have to, but let me ask you another question. As a contractor, should equipment manufacturers be pouring a ton of money and effort into getting their equipment in trade schools and spending all that money toward training? They don't have to, but should they?
Yeah.
Would it make them more successful?
Yes.
Okay. So then as the contractor, would you not want to do the same thing for your customer?
I would, but it's a slippery slope, because when you're going in and you have a 75-year-old man and you're changing his system, you're downsizing it to the proper size. And he says, yeah, but my system used to be hotter. The air used to feel, I would feel the air standing in my kitchen. Now I don't feel the air. It's still the same temperature in the house,
Right.
but he doesn't feel the air blowing on him anymore.
That reminds me of that. There was like a TV show or something. I don't know if you guys have saw it. I don't remember what it was. I just remember that there was a part in the show where this guy, like from the government, walks this other guy into a room, and he's like, "You feel that?" He's like, "No."
Oh.
He's like,
I do remember this.
"He's like, it's room temperature," and he's like, "This is the room temperature room. This is where we got the room temperature from." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
So
Okay.
should we be trying to re-educate people to explain it? Because we all know that you shouldn't be blowing air on people and that you should just feel comfortable in a room. But some people have become accustomed to. And when we've got the heat pump revolution coming on right now, this might be a point of contention here, because these guys are like, I don't feel the air, but it's the right temperature. We're now circulating the air. The room's comfortable, but you don't feel that air blowing on you. So it's not as hot.
There's something I would say to that. So Adam wrote an article about value and perceived value. So one thing that worries me, should we educate consumers? Yes. And this is how I think it should go. So there's going to be a bunch of people sending that messaging out to the marketplace, right? Some people are going to have value to bring, and some people are going to have perceived value that may not be very valuable, right? Hardcore marketing. And they could easily confuse the market.
Mm.
And then homeowners don't know what to do. And they may like that because that means they're going to win more jobs. So how does the good guy win with value marketing instead of perceived value marketing? And I think that's where this movement, this whole deal, is where we all have to collectively say the same thing. If we're going to market with the same strategy, the same message, then the good guys could maybe trump card the confusion that the bad guys are maybe playing.
See, like I actually think I think the new Manual S is powerful, and it gives people a lot of room to make choices, right? But like with the whole heat pump thing, like what you guys were talking about with sizing and that, I think it's kind of delivered in a way where you have the choice. And like somebody was asking me yesterday, so I live in a cold climate. Should I size a heat pump for, the heating load? I'm like, well, maybe, or maybe not. Like I think it's more of an opinion now. And like on a case by case basis, like what is your ductwork? Can your ductwork handle that? If not, size it for cooling.
Yep.
Look at like the old methods for the old Manual S, right? But I don't think you could just like, hey, now we are installing heat pumps. Let's go full bore, and it's good because like we're gonna create comfort issues, and people are gonna get pissed off, and that's what's gonna happen. You know?
Yeah. So let's define comfort, though. Is comfort what we read in a book, or is comfort what someone feels, and is it going to change for each person?
I think it is. I mean, when you look at the ASHRAE graph on a psych chart, and it's a square this big, and it ranges from this temperature to this temperature, and this humidity level to that humidity level, and somebody felt comfortable at that corner and at that corner. So I think it is subjective, and people do feel different. And that's why I think it's important to follow the standards, because they're going to get you to the place where the system's operating and performing as it should. But to your point about, well, this old system used to blow warmer air on me, and I enjoyed that. And so I felt comfort. I felt it was almost like reassurance comfort, not necessarily physical room air temperature comfort. And so I think those are some of the things. And so back to your original question, should we educate? Absolutely. I think we've got to have those conversations so that people know what to expect and what's coming. And then they can make a decision. Do I go with a hybrid system? Do I go all electric? But they can, us helping educate and informing, I think is a great way to help them reach a good decision so that they're comfortable, whether that's how they feel this way or how they feel mentally about what is or isn't happening.
So this definitely is, my head's spinning right now thinking about how, and I just went through the process of fixing my home, right? And going through the process. And as I was going through, I've read the books, I've heard all this stuff, but I experienced it, as I tightened up my house, as I fixed ductwork before I replaced my system, I started to get more uncomfortable in my house with my existing system, because I could sit on my couch and I'm feeling air hitting the back of my neck. And I'm like, what? This is uncomfortable,
And during the process, as he was doing this and we designed the system for his house, we cut the BTUs in half in his house.
And
he had a 4-ton with 100,000. We went with a 2-ton heat pump with no backup.
But it was massively oversized. Okay. But
that's huge.
Yes.
But and the thing is, he's in HVAC, and he was in the beginning of the process. He was scared, like he was nervous it wasn't going to work.
Well, and I was actually thinking of Illinois. So I was thinking, holy cow, 2-ton heat pump with no backup heat. How in the world? And I remember.
No, California.
Different.
Now I was when I put no resistive heat strips, no anything. Now I size my electrical for it and stuff just in case, right?
Yeah.
But no, I was like, I'm not going to need the heat strips. Like, even though my design temperature is 37 degrees for winter, like we're the shell's keeping the house. We have enough, like you guys were talking about yesterday, we have enough heat producing devices in the house that, and so I have to say, and I have to say, as hard as Adam worked on my design, he still messed it up because it's still oversized. I came home on my design temp's like 37. I think it got to 34 one day, and I came home and my system's satisfied. And then there was a day in October towards the end of the summer when I had the cooling system running and I was above design, and I come home and my system's satisfied. And I said, Adam, I think we messed up even more still. Like, no, I joke with Adam about that. We still haven't added fresh air though. So we are going to add fresh air. That's going to add a little bit of load, but
so I actually am running a 2-ton heat pump in Chicago.
No backup?
I do have backup. I have 5 kW of backup, 1,800 square foot house, which is still impressive. So I tightened up my shell and insulated. And after doing all that, I didn't redo my load calc. So I thought it would be fun to figure out my real life balance point. So like 10, 11 o'clock at night on like a Friday night, I'm sitting there like on the couch watching my phone and watching the outdoor temperature. I'm like, it's 1 degree right now.
Yeah, we were getting messages all night. And then Adam goes, hey, my wife just realized I've been playing Frankenstein with my own system. And she was really upset with him. So we have a question in here, and this is a good point. This is from Ray. He's a very good commenter and has always been around. Ray says, if we do all this work for a customer, what happens if it backfires?
The thing is, like, I think, I mean, you tell your opinion too, but like once you start going through the manuals and the process, and the more you do it, the more you understand it works. Like, it's not like, hey, this is hocus pocus. Like, I like to think like Manual J is thick. It's like a 2-inch thick book. It is intimidating. If you just randomly open it up, I feel like it's more confusing than the Bible. I mean, but
thank you, Adam.
But like the basis of it is like what I like to think. One of the first things that Jack Rise went over is like UA delta T,
Right.
So UA delta T. So it's like all you're doing is it's math. It's math. It's
Right.
like you're looking at an area of a surface and you're looking at what the R value or the U value is, and you're calculating how quickly the heat will transfer based on the delta T of the, indoor temperature versus the outdoor temperature. And that's it. There's not, I mean, there's a lot more physics and stuff into it than that, but that's like the basis of everything.
I would say, we need to get ready to wrap this up, but a few closing words. One thing is so this, when we were in the seminar yesterday that Chris had with Russ and Steve, yeah, it took me a minute here. I'm like, well, who else was up there?
That's
But
right.
not that Steve's forgettable. It was just my head's just whatever. That was my favorite seminar of the show so far. And not saying that everybody else's weren't good. That genuinely, I'm just digging holes right now. Yeah. But you guys made a point and you said you can't just jump into a load calculation software and not have read the ACA manuals. You need to understand the ACA manuals. That's just like, you can't just pick up a set of digital gauges and put them on a system and think you're going to be a super tech. You have to know when you're giving bad information. You can't just turn on Measure Quick and say, this tells me how to be a technician. It doesn't.
Right.
It just makes the job easier if you know how to use the load calculation software. We can't just assume that every company out there tomorrow is going to be able to just do everything to these extremes.
There's a learning curve.
There's a learning curve. And for the people that are trying to do better, for the people that are in the better HVAC movement, they're going to have to put in the work.
So, Chris, I would throw out two thoughts because a question came up during that session about, well, what happens if they've got a 4-ton and I do the load and it requires a 2-ton? And you go in and tell the homeowner and they say, well, gee whiz, or I think it was a 3-ton and I want to downsize it to a 2. And he said, well, I've had this 3-ton the whole time. And I went up and said, well, it's entirely possible. And it depends on the status of the system, but that 3-ton could have been operating like a 2-ton this whole time. And so I think that's getting back to your question about what happens, or Ray's question about what happens if I do this and it backfires. I don't think it's going to backfire, but I think there could be other things that are going on. You talked about tightening up your home and insulating. I think there's assumptions that might be made about, Rob Bennett gave a class on making assumptions about infiltration. You may assume even the worst case, and it could be far worse than that. So there's, I would say if you're following the manuals, you've got a very, very high chance of hitting it right the first time. But if not, it's something on the house.
And data helps because when Adam
helps.
ran the load on my house, and then we did a Measure Quick report on my existing system, we did a True Flow report on my existing system, and Adam, is explaining, and we're looking at everything, and he goes, we should put in a 2-ton. And I was a little hesitant, but I trust the science. And so I'm like, okay, but then we look at everything and we're like, well, my system's only delivering 2.5 tons as it is, right? And it's a 4-ton or whatever it is. So it's like, okay,
A little more. Yeah.
So that's an argument for this information and your predictive airflow forecasting that you're doing too. This is having this data and having these, remember, 6 years ago when this technology was coming out and everybody's like, that's dumbing down the industry. We don't need that silly stuff. Well, this silly stuff is helping.
You need to use all the tools you have in your arsenal. If it means duct leakage, duct leakage is a big one. If you're reducing the static, you're reducing your duct leakage period by default, even if you don't pull out a bucket of mastic or tape. But blower door, duct blaster, True Flow,
Good
Manual
design.
J, good design, quick model. Start going through all of the tools in your arsenal and you're not going to fail. Like it's just,
it's a road, man. You got to go down it. And if you go halfway and you get off, that could almost, I'm not going to say it's the worst thing you could do, but like, I know companies back home, and I've heard a horror story where the company's like, we tried that load calculation stuff. We ran it on the house and we put that system in and it didn't work. And we went right back to what we were doing. And it's like the problem is you got off the road too early and you didn't realize what you did wrong to get it all the way right.
Yeah.
And that's what I worry mostly about is people get down the road, they get a little piece of it, and then they go, well, it's not working. I'm going to back up quickly. And it's like, well, what did you miss? Like, let's work through that and keep going and get you all the way.
Yeah. We're
That's
not
the fear I have.
perfect. You know, we aren't perfect. We just have to strive to be better, I think, is the important thing.
It's all science and math, so it's not like hocus pocus.
Oh,
It's
I'm in
not
trouble
like a
then.
crystal ball
I'm in
type
big
deal, you
trouble.
know?
Well, the good news is somebody did the math for us.
There we go.
So there's a lot that we just have to follow a few simple rules and we're in good shape.
All right. Well, I think it's time that we wrap this up. We've been going for about 30 minutes. I'm going to put Chris Hughes in the hot seat. Why don't you close out the show? Give us some encouraging words, an encouraging quote. What do you got?
Well, man, the pressure.
Come on, Chris.
Don't have dead air. Right?
Nice.
Good answer.
We were just talking about, dead air. Try not to have dead air.